Hello folks, I hope you're having a great day today. Today I want to talk to you about one of the classics of science fiction from the 60s. It's written, and it's Make Room by Harry Harrison. It's actually the foundational story for Soylent Green, which was a famous movie. Today we're going to talk about the novel itself that was sort of the foundation for it, talk about how it's not anything like the movie at all, and they took a lot of liberties. So even if you've watched Soylent Green or have enjoyed Soylent Green, I would recommend going and reading the movie, or reading the novel rather. It's going to be very different than having watched the movie. So let's start with who is Harry Harrison, the author of the novel of Soylent Green. We'll take a look at the novel itself that inspired the movie and such, and we'll take a look at the novel and how it kind of really goes in a different place than the movie itself, which is very loosely based off of Make Room. All right, so let's take a look. Make Room is written in the mid-60s by Harry Harrison. Harry Harrison is a huge fan of science fiction. He just grew up loving it. He grew up writing it. He was born in the mid-20s, and he lived until about 5 years ago or so, and he wrote most of his career. He wrote a ton of short stories, ton of novels, and such. He also was an editor of a lot of science fiction sort of magazines and publisher and such. He just loved the genre so much that he was not content just to do some writing. And he wrote everything from comics to short stories and such. Almost everything he touched was pure science fiction, hard science fiction, although he will regularly write with a sort of humorous tone and a humorous sort of send-up. He will regularly pen these send-ups of the genre or of famous stories. Like, for example, he'll have a huge novel that's pretty successful in the later 60s. That's a send-up of Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers. Or he'll publish some stories based on the spy story, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., that are called, I think, there's a robot from an organization called ROBOT, and there's another one who's a spy for PIG and such. So he'll have these little send-offs and stuff. He's big into the sort of he understands the genre, he understands where it's coming from, he understands the tropes, and he's not afraid to send them up. And a lot of his works are going to do so. Now, not all of his works are going to be in that sort of a comedic tone. And Make Room is a great example of such a book. This book, which is my beat-up copy that I picked up from a used bookstore a long time ago, this book is about 208 pages long, and it is set in 1999. So we'll take a look at it now. It's in a future book. And if you've seen Soylent Green, obviously this is where the story came from a little bit. It's really not at all like the story is. This is much more sweeping in sort of its impact, even at 208 pages. It also goes to places that the movie itself, Soylent Green, doesn't go to, and vice versa. Soylent Green adds something that's not even in Make Room, and it ends up being sort of its centerpiece. So let's take a look. Make Room is set in 1999 in a future where overpopulation has not been corrected. So as a result, your infrastructure is crumbling. There's lots of crime. It's hard to find food. So a lot of alternative food sources are being found, like soy and seaweed and stuff like that. In fact, there's a scene, for example, early in the book in a meat market where you will see that they're selling like everything that can be sold. That's meat, like dog and stuff, rats and such, whatever they could sell. And only the highest quality rich people could afford even rats or dogs. If you wanted to get meat, the only options were things like that that were available. So it's seedy and such. Now the novel itself is going to follow multiple people throughout the book itself. Doesn't just have just one central character. Although if it did have a central character, it's going to be the comp that you know from Soylent Green 2, the Charlton Heston's character. If you said that the book did have a central character, it's going to be his. He's the main protagonist. During the course of the storyline, he is going to come across this young guy who stole some Soylent steaks from a local place that was going on sale. He went into this area of sort of the rich places in order to sell them. After he sells them, he doesn't leave. Instead, he will kill the guy who has found him and who owns the place, and then he'll flee. So he has committed this crime, and then most of the book are going to be tracking down his crime. by the comp, and the cop's going to go into a number of different places. He's just going to follow into the man's the dead man's estate, into his place where he's living, his apartment complex, his girlfriend, and such. And so you're going to see a lot of different sort of him going into a variety of different places, different worlds, everything from culture parties down to the worst places in New York City and the surrounding metro area. So you'll get a big tour, and you'll have a lot of characters that are involved in it too, and it's got a very sweeping plot. And the basic overall theme is overpopulation and what happens if we don't take it seriously as a major sort of environmental threat. So that's where Harrison's coming from, and that's one of the reasons why the novel was so good. It was one of the first that kind of came out and kind of looked at this idea of overpopulation as a big threat. He came across this idea when he was in India in the 40s visiting, and some local people had told them that they were dealing with a lot of overpopulation issues in the local people, and they suggested that anybody who wanted to get rich would need to start selling some like condoms, rubber, stuff like that to the local people in India. They'd probably make it really big or really rich, because it would give them an opportunity to have only planned children, so forth. And so because of how bad overpopulation was getting into the 40s, which was like 80 years ago. And that's where he kind of got his nugget for a sort of a story based around that. So he does write this novel in the mid-60s. Now, again, this is a man who has written quite a bit, and we'll actually come back to some of his stuff later on. There's at least one of his things I have in the queue. The first of his stainless steel rat series we'll look at. But what I really want to do though is I really want to give you a chance to take a look at Make Room, Make Room, because it has nothing in common with the movie that you might be more familiar with. And so in Soylent Green, again, I don't want to keep this very spoiler heavy or anything like that, but in Soylent Green, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have this main character who's a comp. Again, he's going to be following a murder, trying to solve it. He's going to be going in and living with this woman and such. And he's going to find out something about our society that is very dark and grim at the end in this famous scene, which I will of course not spoil for you, because if you haven't seen the movie, that's really stupid of me. Although it is an old movie, so hey, look, if somebody mentions it in the comments, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But that spoiler, that sort of resets the entire, it's kind of like the end of Planet of the Apes, where it kind of resets the entire movie for you, and now you go back thinking, oh, well, this is what was happening all along. And it's the same thing is true in this. At the end of it, they have this sort of surprise, twist ending, and it kind of sort of conceives your things. But that was never in Make Room, Make Room. And this entire alternative opportunities for making sure people are taken care of and eating and so forth was not a part of Make Room, Make Room by Harry Harrison. That was all added in. So all this extra stuff is added in. And none of the stuff in Make Room, Make Room that's very interesting to me, like the meat market and following these other characters other than the comp, and having entire narratives for these other characters, is not something that's in, again, it's not in the movie at all. So if you liked Soylent Green, if you've watched it, if you thought this is a pretty good movie, go and read the book it's based on. It's only 208 pages. Harry Harrison is not this dense writer who's going to keep you up all night. It probably took me 2.5 hours to read it the first time. I read it again preparing for this video. It was more like 2 hours and 45 minutes, but that's probably because I was enjoying reading Harry Harrison again. And this is a fun. Again, this is his best one. This is a guy who wrote tons and tons of works, but this is the one that's considered his best work, his classic work, the one that's going to stand the test of time. And in 100 years, if you know who Harry Harrison is, it's going to be because of Make Room, Make Room. It's not going to be because of the Stainless Steel Rat or something like that. In a way that's not too similar to older writers like Chambers, who wrote in the late 1800s, who most people don't know except for his Yellow Sign horror stuff, and some other writers like that who had these definitive works that have remained, but the rest of their stuff, no matter how popular it may have been at the time, has kind of fallen by the wayside. So Harry Harrison, a lot of people still know him because he's in their living memory. They remember reading his stuff growing up. They met him at conferences and conventions, that sort of thing. But I'm not sure that 100 years from now, people will still be reading still rap. But they will, I guarantee you, still be reading Make Room, Make Room. It's a classic of science fiction. It's one of the great sort of soft science fiction stories in the 50s and 60s that's going to come out, that's going to really push the ideas that it wants to tell you about, that are about social stuff that's going on, that's made to life. It's not a hard science fiction set hundreds of years in the future on some science fiction, on some science spaceship or planet or something like that. It's set here, now, today, a few years in the future, when overpopulation has gotten to be such an issue that we're having, that we're having concerns about it. So the idea is to put overpopulation and the environmental questions that it raises on the conversation, on the stool steps, and so forth. So there's sort of this didactic aspect to it, which is done incredibly well. So it's one of the first that kind of does that. It's these first sort of environmental sort of leads in science fiction and such. And so it's a great work for its time. It has stood the test of time. You can still read it today. It's pretty good. So that's Make Room by Harry Harrison. So take a look at the comments. If you've read Make Room, let me know what you thought of it. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What did you think? Was there a particular character, a particular scene that stuck out to you? I'd love to talk to you about that more. If you didn't like it, if you thought that my review of it is overly generous for some reason, hey, I'll be happy to talk with you about it in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Hey, and if you liked this video, then I don't know why you don't hit that subscribe button over there, because there's going to be so many more videos like this to follow. This channel is a channel that focuses on horror, science fiction, and fantasy, and so we look at those genres and some older stuff. This is from the 60s. Actually, in a few minutes, I'm going to film a scene that's for a book that was a fantasy short story. It's one of the classics that was written in the 20s. In a little bit. So we're taking a look at all these sort of classic stories and kind of unpack them and such, from things that came from the 60s or 70s to things that came back from the 1860s or 70s that are these great classics that people have forgotten about. Because as the channel's main motto is, the worst thing about new books is that they keep us from reading the old ones. So hit that subscribe button. We'll be happy to hit you up with more things. And hey, if you made it this far into my video, that means you took your time out of your day to watch it. And I really do appreciate that you took some time out of your day to invest in my video. So thanks again.